Good.
We were a little worried it was going to come back.
Morning, everyone. Got a few things here this morning, and we have a program we do every summer at our World Conference. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to TDWI's World Conference in San Diego, and also those of you who are attending our Executive Summit, the co-located event also on the floor above, taking place over the next 3 days. So welcome to San Diego. TDWI, our mission is to be the premier provider of education and research services to the BI, data warehousing, and advanced analytics community. This event, the events that you're here this week for, of course, represent our educational efforts, and many of you have been to some of these events before, and we hope to see many of you at others as well. But we also have a research organization. We have 3 full-time research analysts. Our role in our research department is not to project the market. We don't do forecasts. We don't look at the market and say how big it is or how fast it's growing. We don't evaluate vendors and put them into any kind of a chart. What we focus on at TDWI is strictly the notion of best practices. What are people doing in their organization that have been successful, and how can we share those success stories with practitioners such as yourself? So one of the capstones of that effort, we have numerous research reports that are distributed. If you go to our website, you'll find hundreds of them. But the capstone of that every year is our August event, where we announce the Best Practice Award winners. In January, we put out an announcement saying, if you think you've done something that is worthy of sharing with the community, please let us know. And we asked the faculty members who are teaching your courses over the next few days to be the judges. And those folks really put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and we really appreciate their effort. But right now, this is the culmination of that effort, and it's our opportunity to present those awards. So to do that, I'd like to introduce one of our directors of research at TDWI, Philip Rustom. Philip?
Thank you, Rich, for that introduction, and my special thanks to all of you attending. We really appreciate you joining us here in San Diego, and I hope everyone has a really great and fruitful conference. Now, I did not receive a remote clicker, so I'm going to just cue you to go to the next slides. So the next slide, please. So like Rich said, we do produce the Best Practice Awards every year. We've been doing this for around 18 years now, right? And we do typically give some kind of user organization awards in 10 different categories. And once in a while, we'll have 2 or more entries in one category that deserve an award. And that's what happened this year. And that's why we have 11 awards across 10 categories. I'll explain what the categories are as we go. And if you would, please hold all of your applause until the very end so we can get through this pretty quickly. So I'm going to go through the categories in alphabetical order, starting with Advanced Analytics. And this year's winning organization is Telenor Pakistan. They are a very large telco focused on mobile, obviously in Pakistan. And the judges issued an award here
To advance the slides.
because Telenor extended their data warehouse environment to support operational analytics for churn prediction with automated
perfect. Just hit
incentives
the,
that
page
just
up.
automatically go out to customers when it looks like they might churn. So very creative use of real-time technologies, but largely based solely around the data warehouse, with additional things like location intelligence, advanced visualizations. And so no one from Telenor could make it today, but they were assisted in writing their award entry by folks at Teradata. So we have Catherine Knowles-Marchioni, who's a vice president at Teradata, accepting the award for Telenor Pakistan. Yeah, the next category is business intelligence or data warehousing on a limited budget. And we're always amazed at how much people can get some bang for the buck for the organization while not really spending that much money or spending much time. And that was the case with this year's winner. This will be USAA. You're probably familiar with them as an insurance company based here in the United States with a focus on the military and veterans. And so the thing that got the judge's attention is that in the wake of that current economic recession, knock on wood, we're out of it, USA management decided that they needed a better way to look at all of their financial investments so they can sort of get repositioned for life after the recession. And so a mere 10 weeks and $26,000 later, the BI and Data Warehouse team there had built a data mart with ad hoc, self-service reporting, and it exceeded management expectations. So receiving the award today will be Jay Chrysler, who's the BI governance lead, and James Dombavanti, who's the senior software developer and integrator there. So the next category would be emerging technologies and methods. And this year's winner is Motorola Mobility, which is a Google company. So as Motorola Mobility went more global with their business, they needed a unified data repository so they could have a comprehensive and also a single view of the business and its customers. So they extended their data warehouse to embrace big data, advanced analytics, cloud, open source, Hadoop. See, this category of emerging technologies and methods, it's really about the new stuff. And that list of things I just reeled off, that's a lot of new techniques and methods. So that's what got the judge's attention. So today we have two people accepting the award. So we have Balaji and Taig from Motorola Mobility, plus a solution sponsor who assisted them in the creation of the award entry, Marcus Holm, who's an account executive with Cloudera. A category we've been given an award in for about 15 years now is Enterprise BI. And really what judges look for in this category is very large-scale reporting, OLAP, dashboards, things we might associate with business intelligence, but on a truly an enterprise scale, not a department one. So the winner this year would be Aircell Telecom. Judges looked at this and saw that Aircell faced a challenge. They had many diverse IT systems for customer interactions, and the company goal was to create a single customer view for greater satisfaction and revenue lift. And so at Aircell, their solution was to create an enterprise data warehouse and business intelligence technology stack that integrates 20-plus data streams, many of them creatively and in real time. So we have a representative, Sanjeev, accepting the award today. He's head of enterprise data management. And again, Teradata was the solution sponsor, so Catherine Knowles Marcioni will come up as well. So that was the enterprise BI category. You know, a lot of the categories in the awards are something of a catch-all, so there are actually many things within the category. And that's the case with enterprise data management strategies. Within this category would be things like data integration and all the stuff that could involve, from ETL to data federation to event processing, and also things like data quality could be in this category, metadata management, master data management, and so forth. And this year, the winning organization is Advanced Auto Parts, and I personally was involved in this judging. Later, I'll tell you, we have about 20 judges. We divvy these things out. I was impressed because they had a business goal of extending their leadership in service. I don't know if you're familiar with Advanced Auto Parts. It's a chain of retail stores, and they're well known for great customer service, as well as the fact that they have their own garage out back and they can service your automobile. So they want to extend their lead in that kind of service, but also just have better product availability. So when the customer comes in, the product's on the shelf, ready to go for that customer. And they achieved this through a large master data management solution. It got our attention because, first of all, a lot of MDM solutions are just about one domain, typically the customer data domain. This one, it goes across a wide variety of stuff like product data domains, locations, because, you know, retail stores are in different places. And it's big, 650,000 stock keeping units, 350,000 vehicle models, 35 million cross-references. It's got to be one of the biggest master data management solutions I've ever seen. So today, we don't have anybody here to accept the award from Advanced Auto Parts, but their solution sponsor is Stebo Systems, and Eric Kuppinger from there is with us today. Now, also, I mentioned earlier, sometimes in one category, we'll have two winners because we think we have entries that deserve awards. And so that was the first winner in Enterprise Data Management Strategies. Here's the second one. This winning organization is Standard Life PLC. They're headquartered in Edinburgh, Scotland. And judges saw these guys have a technical goal, which was to create a general ETL framework with 40 reusable components. I don't know about you, I've been in a lot of organizations where we sort of pursued that holy grail of development reuse, right? You know, thinking that we could get higher productivity, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. These guys really made it work and made it work in spades. And so they were able to achieve high productivity in development for ETL development, saving around 5 million pounds. And it's highly collaborative. They had a wide variety of analysts, from system analysts to business analysts, who can view, define, modify business rules for ETL processes. So very impressive for the collaboration. Accepting the award is Alistair Finn, who's Senior Systems Developer, and Jim Shaw, Solutions Architect. I have to say our most competitive category is the next one, Enterprise Data Warehousing. By competitive, I mean we get far more entries in this category than any other. And it's fun to judge, I have to say, because it's just wonderful stories from people like yourselves who are doing amazing things with data warehouses. And, you know, here we are entering the age of big data. There's a lot more going on there. A lot of you are going deeper into analytics, and so you're adjusting your enterprise data warehouse accordingly. And so this year, we found that Stanford Hospital and Clinics had worked out an innovative late binding technique, which enables their analytics and enables them to deal with change. I'd love to tell you all about late binding techniques, but it's basically where you use query processes and this sort of thing to populate data models on the fly, as opposed to what we usually do in data warehousing, which is pre-populate things. So, you know, this really helps you to deal with changing data models, as well as changing business entities that are modeled. So, accepting the award today is Glenn Dreyer. He's Director of Enterprise BI, and their solution sponsor is a company called Health Catalyst, and the slide says Dan Burton, but actually I believe we have Brian Eliason from Health Catalyst with us. Another fairly competitive category is government and nonprofit. And these are really great stories, because quite often they're about really helping people, helping citizens, helping patients in healthcare, and helping students in education. These are really great stories. And so this year, judges settled on an award for USDA Risk Management Agency. And basically, one of the things they do is oversee crop insurance policy as administered and provided through federal government agencies. And so they were able to use enterprise data warehouse and data mining techniques to counteract fraud, waste, and abuse relative to crop insurance policies. And the result was they were to avoid costs of around $1.5 billion over the years 2001 to 2007, and reduced indemnities equal to a return of $23 for each dollar spent on the system. That's an extremely high return on investment. So accepting the award today will be Dr. Bertis Little, who's the Associate VP there, and their solution sponsor, again, is Teradata, and Catherine Knowles Marciani will pick that up for them. Organizational structure, again, this category could have a lot of stuff in it. We see people submitting entries about data governance, data stewardship. This could be about your team structure. How have you put together your BI, your data warehouse team, your analytics team? It could be a wide variety of stuff that's more organizational in nature. And I also, Rich mentioned in our introduction that we typically do give awards to user organizations, but once in a while, the IT department within a vendor company enters and provides a really great story, so we give an award. So the winning organization is SAP, but understand this is for an internal IT project, not for one of their products. And SAP is like a lot of companies. They needed to optimize business processes, lower costs, and that kind of thing. So their solution is to create a data quality program with ample doses of data stewardship, governance, quality metrics, but the whole thing is aligned to business goals to be sure that data management is giving something to the business that it truly needs. So accepting the award today is Maria Viller. She's the Global Vice President of Data Management and Governance at SAP. Performance Management, in this category, Quicken Loans gets the award. Their goal was to grow their online lending business. You may have seen their TV ads and that sort of thing and know that They are a leader for giving customers the ability to apply for a loan online. And of course, it's not quite real time because that's not quite proper to this process, but it's very fast. And so the goal was to make the process even faster so they could close more loans. And by doing this, they were able to use data warehouse and BI technologies, other data management technologies.
Doesn't the guy up there already have a clicker? He's advancing the slides himself, or are you advancing?
And that was up 133%.
But why don't I just use his?
$30 billion in 2011.
Okay, okay.
And so representing
Okay, no problem.
representatives accepting the award are Amir Brown, data warehouse engineer.
40
and
minutes.
Nami from the BI team.
Yeah, 40 minutes. I think,
Right
or is it
time
45? No,
BI.
it's 45.
Is
Yeah,
really
45
about what we might call real-time technologies or near-time, on-demand technologies. Like a lot of you have built dashboard programs where the dashboards are refreshed for manager use very frequently, a number of times through the day, that kind of thing. So with that in mind, judges this year chose to give an award to British Gas. They're based in the UK. They wanted to provide their residential customers with detailed insights into energy consumption and provide the information very close to real time. So they came up with the Smart Energy Analytics. It's a web portal. And the portal helped them to close more business with a revenue of around 8 million pounds over 4 years. And so I don't think we have anyone from them today, do we? And so the solution sponsor is Cognizant Technology Solutions, and Purima Ramaswamy is going to pick up the award for them. All right. You know, you may be thinking it'd be nice to talk to some of these winners. After all, they've done impressive things. That's why we're giving them awards. Maybe you could pick their brains, learn from them a little bit. So some of the award winners will be available at lunch tomorrow. That's Tuesday, August 20th, 11:15 to 12:45 in the Douglas Pavilion Exhibit Hall. So look for a lunch table with assigned BP winners. And also think about submitting your own award. I know many of you have done impressive work that other people could learn for. You know, that's one of the things we look for with the awards. We hope that what you're doing is relevant to a wide range of other organizations. So think about submitting an entry for an award. The timeline would be, we'll announce these things in January 2014. The entries will be due from you in April, and then in June we'll announce like we're doing today. So TDWI and myself personally, again, I'm Philip Russum. We want to thank the judges. We had around 25 individuals this year who volunteered their time and expertise to judge these awards. And also, deep congratulations to all the winners. You know, you deserve recognition, and that's what these awards are all about. You can also read about the award winners. I think on your tables there's a piece of paper. And if you look on one side of it, towards the bottom, there'll be a URL down there where you can go and read more details, much more details about what the winners are doing. So that's the end of the award ceremony. Big round of applause for all the BP winners. Thanks, everybody, and Rich Violet will step in and announce the next speaker.
Thank you, Philip, and again, congratulations to all the award winners. It's my pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote speaker. This gentleman, I think, may be able to share problems that he dealt with that may be similar to many that you are looking at today. This gentleman works for Canadian Railway, and in 2010 was facing some difficulties with slow delivery of BI solutions to his customers. Customers were getting frustrated with the amount of time it took. Shadow IT organizations were popping up throughout the organization, and this gentleman decided he needed to do something, and a transformation was called for. This gentleman will tell us a little bit about their adoption of Agile techniques and the success story that they've had. It's my pleasure to introduce Mark Giesbrecht. Mark is the Director of Business Intelligence for Canadian National Railways. Mark started with Canadian National in 1995, working for the Environment Department, managing compliance, impact assessments, and construction projects. Mark was the first exposed to IT projects in 2001 as a product owner of Enterprise SAP project for environmental health and safety implementation. He then transitioned to the role of project manager and architect and led an SAP implementation in a variety of business areas, including plant maintenance and real estate. Mark then formally joined Canadian National's IT department in 2008 and became the leader of the group in 2010. Mark's a passionate believer in fact-based decision-making, continuous improvement, and the importance of relevant, accurate, and accessible information to the business community. Mark also has earned a BS degree in chemistry from the University of Winnipeg and an MBA from the University of Manitoba. It's my pleasure to introduce Mark Giesbrecht. Mark?
Sorry, Rich, I changed it. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that introduction, Rich, and thanks to TDWI for giving me an opportunity to speak this morning on a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. As Rich mentioned, I'm going to talk about CN's adoption of Agile data warehousing and the adaptations we did to make it successful. And for those of you who are fairly mature in your Agile journey, I'm sure a lot of what I'm going to talk about this morning will resonate. For those of you who are just starting out, I hope by the end of this you'll get a sense of some of the things that you can do to get started and that you'll get started right away, because there really isn't any time to lose. So first of all, who is CN? Okay, first of all, we're a railroad. We've got a fairly wide geographical coverage. We go from coast to coast all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. We're a fairly big railroad. We're the largest in Canada. Fifth biggest in North America, over $9 billion in revenues, moving about $250 billion worth of freight every year. So that means we're fairly important to the economy. So as a big company, we're also pretty busy. Our core business is moving cars from origin to destination, and we move about 15,000 carloads a day. And to do that, we have a lot of stuff. We have about 22,000 miles of track, 23,000 employees, 220,000 rail cars, 2,000 locomotives. And all this activity, as you might expect, puts a high demand for information systems. So the railroads have been innovators going back to the Industrial Revolution. A lot of our systems that we use to run the railroad are homegrown. As you might expect, there's not a lot of software out there that runs railroads. And it generates a lot of data. So CN was an early adopter of the data warehouse as a way to manage, store their information. First of all, our main transactional system can only hold a month's worth of data. So obviously, you got to get it out of there pretty quick. Plus, you've got lots of opportunities to integrate it and analyze the processes to try and make things better. So in 2010, after many years of great success with our data warehouse, in terms of metrics and monitoring, we're in a bit of a crisis. The crisis was that the businesses were very unhappy. So in this slide, what I've kind of done is I've put the various rows you can see is the stakeholders in business delivery. So you've got your business sponsors, delivery teams, the PMO, and the folks who actually architect and support it. The waterfall perspective was really our waterfall process was really how warehouse solutions were being delivered, and the business was very upset. They saw delivery as slow as expensive. They saw IT as too rigid in terms of accommodating changes in requirements. This in turn made the delivery teams quite concerned because the business was not terribly engaged in what they were doing, and they felt they were always changing their minds. The BIPMO was upset because we were never on budget and our delivery dates were always slipping. And the practices and the support teams, they were less upset because at least the solutions that were being delivered were fairly supportable, but their concern was we really weren't making the warehouse much better. Because things were expensive and slow, whenever you talk to the business about improving that dimension or improving that fact, or introducing new technologies, a lot of times they were just like, whoa, that's going to be too much. Let's just focus on what I got to get done. So as a consequence of the struggles that we were having, around 2005, CN IT's group created an Agile department whose job it was to develop rapid application development. And as soon as the business heard about this, they really gravitated towards it, right? Because you've got a situation where they can sit down next to a developer, start coding, get solutions right away. So they got really good engagement with this because there was no IT bureaucracy. They did start to feel the pain after a while if they wanted larger solutions or if they wanted to go over several months, but for the most part, they were getting what they wanted. The challenge was, and the delivery teams were happy too because they had the high engagement. The challenge started to come around in support because there was no documentation. These were very siloed solutions, very departmental solutions. You had a situation where only the developer who was doing the coding really understood it, so they were sucked into support long past deployment. And the practices and the support teams were there extremely unhappy because these solutions had almost no reusability, there was no standardization, everything only looked exactly the way the developer who had coded it. In fact, if you had 3 developers working on the same solution, you could actually trace the lineages as you were looking through an archaeological dig. BI self-service was really non-existent, right? It was all around just getting these 2 things to the business and not much consideration for that. So we knew we had challenges with waterfall. We knew we weren't delivering. We knew the business really liked Agile, but we were concerned around the structure, both from a project delivery and from an architecture perspective, right? So that kind of sums it up right here. Deep dissatisfaction with waterfall, but concerns about an Agile free-for-all, because that was kind of our perception. So the solution for us came in fall of 2011, when some of my folks went on some training sponsored by a local consultant in Montreal, where it was hosted by Ralph Hughes, talking about Agile data warehousing. And the key about this, the constructs that were in this book, is it really squared the circle between let's deliver value to the business quickly, but let's do it in a manner that's sustainable. So it's this yin and yang of early value and sustainable solutions that really struck home, and it was really the thing that CN was looking for to say, okay, now we kind of have a way forward, right? And the key thing we saw in there as a mechanism to move things forward was the concept of the Scrum, okay? So the Scrum is really, really critical. It's very much, in my mind, the heart of the sprint. The sprint is very much at the heart of the Agile Scrum approach. So, because what's very essential about it is you're taking this huge, you're taking a bunch of intentions, turning it into a backlog, but then you're just taking a portion of that backlog that the team can focus on in 3 to 4 weeks. So no matter how big it is that the entity that you're trying to construct, you're just going to get the team to focus on what they can do in 3 to 4 weeks, right? You build it, you make sure that whatever you've got is tangible, okay? And when I mean tangible, whoever's going to use it can actually touch it and has an opinion about whether it's done or not. And then you have a retrospective to review the whole process and ask yourself the question, how did we do? What do we need to improve? And really that retrospective as a part of the sprint is really, really critical because it endows the team with this spirit of continuous improvement. And it's a spirit of continuous improvement that's going to allow the team to move forward, right? So the sprint is really critical. Take a big backlog, reduce it to just what the team can focus on, make sure whatever they build, whoever's going to use it has a say about whether or not it's finished, review the whole process to say what could we have done better, and then repeat. And it turns out that this approach in software delivery could also be used to actually implement Agile data warehousing on existing projects. And then that's exactly what CN did. CN took the sprint concept and we just superimposed it right on top of our existing project plans, right? And that provided us an improvement framework to try and get the projects to be going forward, right? So we took, some projects wanted to go 3 weeks, some projects wanted to go 4 weeks on the sprints. That's where we allowed some flexibility because obviously this is only going to be successful if you have team buy-in. But the concept of plan, do, demo, retrospect, repeat was really non-discretionary. In addition to kind of putting dropping this sprint concept right on top of the project plan so that you're saying at the beginning of 3 to 4 weeks, what are you going to accomplish? And looking at the end of those 3 to 4 weeks, did we do what we said we were going to do? We also prepared a backlog of Agile data warehousing techniques, and we committed to doing progressive implementation. So it's not unlike going back to this diagram. Agile data warehousing is that huge prioritized project backlog, but hey, Rome wasn't built in a day. What are we going to focus on? Reduce that down to just what you want to accomplish in terms of technique implementation in those next 3 or 4 weeks, and then you implement it, okay? And it turns out if you apply sprints to your projects, you've already implemented one technique, right? So you're already in the game. Also, the whole concept of the retrospective cannot be overemphasized because it really is that collaborative spirit of the prime directive where everyone's getting into a room and having a conversation in a very non-defensive manner, in a non-accusational manner, really trying to help and do what's best for the team, do what's best for the business, and ask ourselves the question, how can we improve? What happened last sprint? Did we do what we said we were going to do? Did we deliver what we say? Was it of the quality we said? If it wasn't, what can we do to change it? Let's try it the next sprint. It's very, very empowering, very, very empowering. And one of the first things that we noticed when we did these retrospectives is that our organization was not aligned the way it should be. Okay? So some of this may be fairly self-evident, but the feedback that came right back from the teams is that we need to have more co-location. Some people were co-located, some people weren't. That's the first thing after the first retrospectives, we put all the teams in the same room so they could learn from each other in a collaborative manner. Second feedback we got is some cases the Scrum Master, who's actually driving the process, or the product architect, who's making the decisions and accountable to make sure that the solution is meeting the business requirements. Those roles were clearly defined, and we straightened that out. And also the BI PMO had a role to make sure that all the projects were sharing best practices between them. So the BI PMO was actually kind of a fly on the wall in a lot of the retrospectives and seeing, okay, what are common themes here and what can we kind of move forward. We got better engagement from the teams and the business almost right away. Just having this kind of collaborative spirit, continuous improvement spirit, within 1 to 2 sprints, it was a huge sea change in attitude because everybody felt finally we're getting some traction and finally we're going forward. Okay? So the next round of improvements, we talked with the teams. We thought, okay, guys, what do we want to focus on next? And really what it came out there is, well, we need some predictability around our sprints. We need to make sure that whatever we say we're going to do, that we actually achieve it, both in in the definition of done and in terms of the volume of work. In order to do that, we had to go back to our waterfall plans and we had to recast the requirements as epics, themes, user stories, and developer stories. Now, this actually wasn't hard for us to do because for the most part, our requirements were fairly good in terms of traceability between the development and the epics, but we only focused on recasting on that particular components of the requirements that we needed to feed that particular sprint. Once you've done that, then you can start to adapt more techniques, like story point estimation process, right? So that's where you're taking your backlog, you're doing a high-level estimate to say, I think this is twice as big as that, this is probably a third as big as that, and if you can reference that against things that you've already delivered, you can start to say, okay, this is what we can commit for then that sprint, right? And then you're doing daily progress tracking to see, are we meeting, are we where we said we would be with respect to this at the end of this day, at the end of this week, at the end of this sprint. We quickly realized that spreadsheets weren't going to do it for us because we've got a lot of projects on the go, and PMO really want to have some visibility. I know some folks are really big around the Post-it notes, and we had that too, but we really felt we needed to implement a tool, so we implemented Jira from Greenhopper. It works very well for us. We actually ran it on a PC at the beginning, and then we were able to move it to a server with Active Directory, and we used kind of the sprint burn-down chart to make sure that things were under control. The business was on board. They were happy. The first time we got into trouble with the business was on the third bullet there about keeping the sprint scopes sacred. Because as soon as they started to see we're getting some traction, as soon as they started to see the team was engaged, right away they started to jam stuff into the sprint. They wanted to say, okay, let's add this. I was having a shower this morning and I had this epiphany and I really, it's week 2 of the sprint and I want you guys to start it right now. Had some big pushback right there. That was the first time that the griefs really started. But we adopted. We said, listen, maybe this sprint we're going to do it, but that's it. We're never going to do it again. Why is that? Because the developers, right? They need to focus. The team needs to focus on that scope. And if we keep injecting more stuff during the sprint, we're never going to get any kind of predictability. And the business got it. They really got it after a while. And besides, you could say to them, if you have this epiphany, after 2 weeks of the sprint, you only got a week to wait to get to reprioritize. The worst case scenario is you have the epiphany the day after the sprint planning, which means, okay, maybe you have 2.5 weeks. Can you wait 2.5 weeks to keep the team motivated and keep morale high and not disrupt things? Yes, I can. Okay, so then you get the business on board. Once you've got a constant sprint velocity, once you're able to really commit, see that every time sprint you're committing to a set of deliverables, and you're able to achieve those deliverables, now you're in a position to re-baseline the whole project. Now you're in a position to say, okay, we said we were going to do this for this amount of money. Now we actually have a sprint velocity with the team. Now it turns out we can really do something else, and that something else is usually less than what you committed to. Now at CN, our budgets are kind of fixed, as I'm sure it is in most organizations, so it was really a negotiation around this is the scope. But we really got buy-in with the business and finance because we were able to prove we had the sprint velocity. So now it wasn't all smoke and mirrors. It was say, listen, we know we're going to be able to deliver the scope for this amount of money because you can see what the team is turning out, right? And then when it came time to renew the budgets, we actually got every single project that was in trouble all got their budgets renewed to complete the scope that was originally set out at the very, very beginning because everyone could see, yeah, this time we can meet our targets. When you get into sprints, quickly you realize that some specialization is required. For sure, when you're starting projects, you've got to do a solution architecture sprint. I know a lot of people in Agile Scrum, when they talk transactional systems, you can just sit down and start coding. Sometimes you can, but in data warehousing, you can really never do that, in my mind, because it's all about the data. If you don't have the data, then you can't build a solution. So you really need to get your requirements. You need to profile those requirements against your warehouse to see where the gaps are, how usable is that data for whatever the business wants you to do. Then you can kind of do a high-level conceptual architecture, do your user story decomposition, you're ready to go. So those are your sprint -1 and sprint 0. During the project, what we quickly found is that you really want to split the design sprints from the development sprints. If it's a very small team, you can kind of do them together, but we found it much more effective to have your designers be building designs, and the definition of done, it's the same concept. The demo is on the sprint design, and who gets to say if it's finished? It's the developers and the business. Yeah, that's going to do what I want. Developer says, yeah, I can code that. You're building a backlog. Now you're starting your development sprint. So you start a series of sprints to build your designs, builds a backlog. Developers start coding that backlog, and then your pipeline starts to fill up. If you have bigger solutions, then you want to get into integration testing sprints as well. So you do a bunch of unit tests. Then you're saying, okay, now we've got something for a release. Now let's do a whole bunch of integration testing on to make sure it's really going to hold. And if you've got really big solutions, then you may even want to do promotion rehearsals. CN is extremely risk averse. We're a railroad, very, very conservative culture. To have a poor promotion is considered a very bad situation, so you don't want to have poor promotions. So in our culture, we definitely want to invest in those rehearsals to make sure that they go smoothly. So this is all around predictability. So once you've got predictability, now the next thing you start to focus on is productivity. Okay, now we're delivering, we know what we're delivering quality solutions, we're delivering quality solutions in a predictable manner. How can we do it cheaper? How can we do it faster, right? So there's a lot of things here that, first of all, standardizing in project administration, putting a PCO. If you have more than, say, 2-3 projects, you really should consider having a PCO. If you don't, project control officer, that's very, very good to alleviate a lot of the administrative burden from your Scrum Masters. And then also standardize things around status reporting into to PMO and to the managers, preparing PowerPoints, things like that. PCO can really help with that. The thing the team really asks for in the retrospectives is tools. Right? So they're only as productive as their tools. If they don't have very good tools, or they don't have tools at all, or they're kind of making up as they go along, that tends to impact productivity. So tools around data profiling, right? Data modeling. Data visualization, like there's a lot of those tools on the market right now. It's a very hot topic. Source to target mapping, that's just a few. I mean, I'm sure there's many, many more that you can think of. But it's really it's really about listening to the team, looking where the bottlenecks are in terms of the processes, and asking yourself, how can we go faster? And a lot of times the answer to going faster is providing the tools that they need. Automation, really, really important. At CN, we have a strong data model practice, a strong ETL practice, and I really focused on them to make sure that all the reviews they were doing were as self-service and as automated as possible. Okay, so we have standards around how our naming conventions should be. That can all be automated. We have standards around code compliance. A lot of that can be automated. So we built. A lot of this was done through Unix scripting, but we were able to build scripts, and that way the developers themselves, the designers, data modelers, or the ETL developers could submit their work to standard packages that we had built. scripts that would check to see for conformity and kick out the exceptions. They would fix those exceptions. Then they would go into the reviews, right? So then when you go into the reviews, it's really around what you're trying to do and not stuff that's not really getting into the minutia at that point. Testing is another huge one. This one we did to varying degrees, I have to say, because you can really go overboard with this. Unit testing, for sure, was automated a lot of times against the profiling results, but integration testing as well. And the nice thing about automated integration testing is it's the kind of thing that makes for a nice transfer to core, because you can hand off all those integration test scripts to the core team, and every time they do enhancements, say 6 months after deployment or a year after deployment, they know that their work is complete if it successfully passed the test. This we haven't advanced on as far as I would like, but definitely have made some progress. Team autonomy, again, I spoke about this earlier. You don't want a situation where everybody has to ask people for things, right? You want them to know where they have to go to get the answer, because you're really tying people up, especially if you're onboarding a bunch of resources. As you see when I get later in the slide, we were kind of victims of our own success as we started to get a lot more traction, more projects came our way. Because CN's a conservative culture and our headcount was capped, the only way I could scale was through hiring consultants. Consultants come on board, they don't know how they do things at CN, so figuring out how to make those consultants as productive as possible, autonomously as possible, was a high priority, right? So that was all around having standards and guidelines in a self-service model. But it's a wonderful thing in a sense, because it really forces your practices and your architecture team to say, hey, this is what we do, and we're going to write it down. We're going to write it down in a manner that anyone can read it and say, yeah, okay, I'm a data modeler. That's how they do it at CN. I'm an ETL developer, but that's how they do it at CN. Become productive right away. Document templates, that's another kind of a no-brainer, right? So you've got all sorts of things, right from managing your user stories to doing source to target mappings, all the way through to test results. You want to anytime you have a template, you can have a template. You want to create them, whether people use them or not. You don't want to get too heavy on that. But there are tools there. People can reach into them and use them if they feel, hey, I got a better way. That's great. Make some modifications, throw it back in the pool for other people to use. We got quite successful with onboarding, I have to say. It was to the point that we were able to actually start looking at offshoring. So we engaged with a firm, a vendor, that had a team in India, and we actually started to move simple staging tables and base facts. Now, for sure, offshore in Agile, it may seem like a bit of a contradiction, but I have to say, if you've got a model where people can work autonomously, and your definition of done is very clean, staging tables, it should be fairly straightforward, because really all you're doing at the end of the day is just mapping one database structure to another database structure within the tables. Base facts can get a little more complicated, but still, if your offshore team is a little bit more senior, they should be able to do it. As soon as you start getting into derived facts or rework, then it gets really tough, because now you're spending just as much time as explaining things to them as you were, you probably could have done it yourself. So definitely seen some success there. Definitely seen some success there. Like to see how much further we can take with it. So you're delivering on time. You're delivering what you said you were going to do it. You're doing it as you're working on productivity to make sure you're doing it cheaper, faster. Now everyone's ready to listen about the enterprise perspective, right? They weren't ready to listen about the enterprise perspective at the beginning because you guys can't even deliver. So don't talk to me about what your grand vision is. But now you're delivering. Now I'm ready to sit down and listen, right? So there's things around reference architecture, very, very important. Reference architecture can be used as a basis of estimates, but it's also good used as a definition of done. Again, it goes back to your self-service. I want you to, what is it you want to build? Well, I want to build something that looks exactly like that, or looks like close to that with this variation. Much easier to have a conversation than if you're starting from scratch. With basis of estimates, you can also quickly get into much more accurate estimates for doing proposals for new work with the business. Business comes in, hey, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Can you guys spec it out? No problem. You do a quick conceptual design, take your basis of estimates, run it through, say, okay, it's going to cost you this much money, right? But maybe we can reduce it into releases, and first release is going to be a lot cheaper. Very difficult to have that conversation around what it's accurately going to cost unless you have basis of estimates. Solution knowledge repository, this is really around back to your transfer to core. So one thing about Agile data warehousing, you're only doing as much documentation during the project in order to have the conversation with your architects and within the team. But at the end of the day, once the project is done, somebody other than the project team is going to have to support that. You've got to invest in documentation at the as-built level. I don't see really any other way around it. You want to put as much documentation as you can into the application. So people, as they're going through, say, an ETL job, what it's supposed to do becomes fairly clear to them. But that only goes so far. The larger context is not going to be available in the application. So you need to invest in documentation that has the full traceability between this is what the business asked us to do, and that's actually what the code does, and that's all the business logic in between. And we've started the transfer projects to core, and I have to say the feedback we've gotten from our support teams has been fairly positive to say, yeah, I can support this. I understand. The way it's been architected, the way it's been documented, it should be fairly straightforward. Technical debt is something that exists in every project. It exists in every warehouse. We have lots of technical debt. One thing I always like to say to my team, the topic comes off often enough, is that the warehouse is full of sins. I mean, everywhere you go in our warehouse, you're going to trip over some dimension that was poorly designed, or some fact that was inefficient, or duplicate dimensions, or what have you. For us, the way we want that to get that fixed is through projects. Projects come up, they're going to touch that dimension, say, no problem, let's do some extra work on that dimension to get it where it needs to be, and have the project pay for it. So you're able, actually, if you've got strong buy-in with the business, if they can see you guys, the team can deliver successfully, if they can see you're productive, they're much more open to have that conversation than if you're not delivering well. The whole philosophy of reuse or fix before rebuild, and to rebuild to reuse where practical, that's really just around going to what's in the warehouse before you say, you know what, it doesn't suit my needs, I'm going to go build another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, right? You say, no, let's have a look at this. Let's see if we can fix it, adapt it to whatever the business is asking for, rather than duplicating it, right? But when we do build it, let's make sure we build it in a way that it can be reused. Someone mentioned earlier that it was like a holy grail, and it is, and you're not always successful. Definitely, you're probably about a 60% success rate, because a lot of times you get into the weeds and it's very, very complicated, but nevertheless, it's really around that philosophy, and again, Agile data warehousing helps you get there because you are successful in your delivery. And then we've actually been able to take it so far as we've been able to apply Agile data warehousing to our enhancement and support work. So here we've been able to take our entire backlog of all the support work, all the enhancements, all the project work, and actually create one gigantic backlog. And then we've organized our enhancement and support teams into sprints, and we work with the business to say, okay, what enhancements do you want to do this round? What's level? And then from the IT standpoint, what support work do we need to do this sprint, and be able to push it through? So we actually that only started this year. That started in January. Still, again, it's still very much a work in progress. So in terms of measuring progress, this is very much, I saw a lot of ROIs and things like that on those presentations for earlier TDWI awards. Haven't got something like that, because this is more from an IT perspective. But I do have these measures. What we have found ourselves to be able to do is we were able to release much earlier, much more frequently. And this, the business is extremely happy about that, because they're able to get that value a lot quicker. Our estimates are much more precise. Because we've had success with the value earlier and the cost estimates, we've been able to scale. So now we have 9 concurrent projects, whereas the time of the big crisis in 2010, we only had 2 concurrent projects. Our project workload is increased as well as a consequence, and our enhancements have increased too. So we've actually gotten more business from the folks in the field wanting to invest in the existing warehouse. As a consequence, we've had to more than double our staff, and it's all externals, Okay, and again, that goes back to making sure that you have a really strong idea what it is that how your delivery model is moving forward. Because if you start bringing a whole bunch of consultants on who all bring their own perspectives, and God bless them, we want their perspectives, you want to hear what they have to say, because a lot of times they'll make things better. But if you don't have a strong vision of, okay, this is how we do data modeling, this is how we do ETL, that they can kind of fall into in a self-service manner, then adding a lot of extra people can really drag you down. Business usage has increased. We've also increased the number of ETL jobs. When I talk data stage here, it's because that's where our primary focus is. We've also got a lot of jobs in Cobalt, but we don't really touch those. That's more in containment. That's increased almost 5 times, and the really good news here is the abends are virtually the same as they were when we only had 700 jobs. So we maybe have 4 or 5 abends a month. That has not changed. That has not changed at all, okay? Even though the number of jobs has increased almost 5-fold, and that just speaks to the quality of the work that folks are doing, okay? So that concludes my presentation. Again, I really hope I've gotten the message through. I guess I certainly don't want to leave you with the impression that it's a fait accompli, that it was all done. It certainly looks a lot better in retrospective than it did when we're actually doing it. I know when in retrospective it's always very clean and it seems very obvious, but of course it wasn't like that at all. But I really do want to emphasize the fact that the sprint concept as a means to deliver Agile data warehousing. We found it very, very successful, and the fact that it's breaking it down into small pieces, right, giving the team focus, and the fact that you've got your definition of done is really entrenched in there in your demo, and you're focusing on that retrospective in the spirit of continuous improvement, it's going to get the engagement you need, and the team's going to drive a lot of this. Like, again, it's looking like that we had the invisible hand from above guiding them. Almost all this direction was through team interaction, the team kind of bubbling up from these retrospectives. We just had to pick the right things and provide the support that they needed to deliver. So thank you very much for your attention.